So good day, everyone. I'm here to discuss about review basic concepts of child and adolescent development. So I'm Dr. Rowena Hibanada, and I hope that you will listen to this lecture. Start. Let's start with the competencies that are expected of you to understand and to apply and to know after this review. So, number one, it is expected that after you have listened to the lecture, you will apply the theories of development to the teaching and learning process to understand that the learning process um, imbues in it theories of development and that you can identify the theories and development in the teaching and learning process. Also, to draw educational implications or research findings related to child and adolescent development, along with the biological, linguistic, cognitive, psychological, and social dimensions as well. So let's start with the definition of important terms in child and adolescent development. So number one is development. Ano ba itong development? Of course, when we say development, are you developing or not? No? Development is basically the pattern of biological, cognitive, and socio-emotional changes that begins at conception and continues throughout the lifespan. So we develop until that area is matured enough. So development is a lifespan process. And most development includes and involves growth, no? And eventually involves decay. So there are two important concepts in development. No, you grow, and of course, with physical body, decay. And it is a subjective. Development is subjective. It's not something uniform, but we can predict development at certain ages, but definitely it is very subjective interpretation of one's changes. So it involves growth, it involves changes, and it involves decay or dying. So let's see the theory of Yuri Bronfenbrenner about ecological systems theory. Bakit importante ito? Of course, we would like to see how a child develops. So Yuri Bronfenbrenner's theory of development, in which the process of development is a joint function of the person, no, and the environment. So basically, the person is influenced by the different levels of environment that one lives with or around with. Okay. So we define also environment as the surrounding condition that influences growth and development. So basically, tinatawag natin itong nurture, how you are nurtured. That actually involves the environment. No, it's not just the physical environment or the earth that we are living in, but also the conditions of the family of the child or of the school or of the community. So these are surrounding conditions and that directly influence the growth and development of a child or of a human person. And then we look at the external and physical conditions and events that can affect a person, no, halimbawa crowded living quarters or a very stimulating social interaction. So you can see that if a child actually lived in a cramped environment or a not so pleasant living condition, it affects the learning. It also affects the development. Of course, the interaction among people around the child is part of the environment as well, and it influences um, the environment basically influences the growth and development of a person. So growth is always, no, it always is connected to changes in the physical dimension of the human person, of physical changes, conception to maturity, you can see the physical changes that a child is undergoing, from the shape, no, to the form, to the structure, to the size of the body. And it will reach a certain level of maturation. No, when we say that there's a certain level of maturation, of course, the different parts of the body will reach a certain level of maturation, and it can be measured easily, such as the height or the weight or the shape of the head or the shape of the different parts of the body. And of course, it is important, no, because this is uh, a physical growth is important also, and it can affect learning. And then of course, we need to understand the word heredity. So what is heredity? No, ayan yung pinapagpasalamat natin sa mga magulang natin kung ano tayo, no? Heredity is a process, no? And it can be only done when a person will have an offspring. Of course, we know the process of how we'll have an offspring, but heredity is the process of transmitting biological traits from person to offspring through genes. And this is the genes is the basic unit of heredity. Importante yan. No? So kailangan wag natin makalimutan yan na lahat ng tao meron siyang minanang genes, no, sa kanyang mga magulang. At kung ano ka man ngayon physically, kung matangos man ang ilong mo, kung maganda ang mata mo, kung matangkad ka, yan, kasama yan doon sa mga traits na minamana natin. So biological traits are actually um, transmitted, no, from parents to offspring. Sabi nila, eh bakit naman yung ako ang tangkad-tangkad ko, yung parents ko naman parehong hindi naman matangkad. Pero baka kasi yung lolo mo. So pwedeng gano'n, ano, yung tinatawag natin na, o kanino ka mas nagmana? Siyempre, doon ka sa dominant genes ng parents mo. At laging sinasabi na 'pag magaling, kapag maganda ang bata ay nagmana sa nanay. So, gusto nating sinasabi 'yun. Pero actually, nalalaman naman natin, 'no, kung ano yung mga similarities natin dito sa ating mga biological traits na when we look at our parents, 'no, or when we look at our grandparents, 'yan. So, basically from parents to offspring through genes, um, that is a basic unit, no, of heredity. So heredity is important. Ano pa yung mga hereditary factors that we have already in our body that will, of course, enable us to learn. And of course, in the child and development theory, we need to know about how we learn. So, what is learning? No, learning is the process by which our experiences brings about permanent changes in our thoughts, no, semi-permanent or permanent changes in our thoughts, in our feelings, and in our behavior. So, you will not say that you've learned when there's no change in your thoughts, in your feelings, or your behavior. So learning should definitely um, be evident with changes in thoughts, changes in feelings, and changes in behavior. Positive learning or negative learning, no? We also hear about unlearning something, no? When you uh, negatively learn something, you have to unlearn it, and then relearning, meaning you have to remember what you have learned before, and of course, positive learning. So learning is important. We learn, no? Ang tawag natin dyan, lifelong learning. As long as we are living, we always learn. And this is a very important concept that we need to understand in terms of child and adolescent development. So the learning never stops, no? The learning doesn't only occur in school, it occur in the different environments of the child. So ano man yung environment na tinitingnan niya, definitely may learning doon. Whether it be positive or negative learning, then it's up to you to ensure that positive learning only occurs one that is helpful to the child, and that is impactful to his development, to being an engaged citizen, to being a responsible citizen, no, that thinks about the common good of people in the society, and one who is makatao, makajos, makabayan, makakalikasan, Filipino. Of course, yun yung mga gusto nating mangyari, yun yung inaasahan natin, no? But of course, the school is a basic unit for learning as well as the home. So the home and the school are places of learning. Other things, no, that other places, of course, now we can see that the child is learning so much from the social media or from the World Wide Web. And so we need to look at how this processes, the processes of learning and getting information actually impacts the child and how the child will live and develop. And then we have maturation, no? Matured, being matured. Maturation consists of changes that occur relatively independent to the environment, whether you are living in a not so good condition of living, or you're living in a very good environment. It is relatively independent, no? Meaning that your biological body will unfold into maturation, according to the plan of the genes contained in the genes. Kung paano yung bodily makeup mo, according to your genes, will mature at a certain time. No? So, maturation is the biological unfolding of an individual according to a plan contained in the genes. So lahat tayo, meron tayong blueprint of development, blueprint of maturation. Kailan magmamature ang aking body, yan, or a certain part of the body. And of course, when we talk about it, we also talk about hereditary factors, no? Inulit lang natin yan na these are important considerations in terms of maturation. Kaya naman ma-mature, no? Pero pag sinabi natin matured kasi normally sa isip, ganyan, no? Pero hindi, biological yan. Kailan nagmamature ang physical body or biological system ng body ng isang tao. Okay? So, ngayon naman punta tayo sa mga theories of child and adolescent development. Pag sinasabi nating theory, of course, these are all ideas based on research and observations and other kinds of evidences which are organized in a systematic manner. Theory is not a fact, no? But it can explain different phenomena, no? A certain phenomenon. So gusto natin na explain natin yung mga bagay-bagay according to research and according to how specialists would observe, and say something about that certain phenomenon. Definitely the child and development theories are impacting how we are teaching, and these theories are definitely worth to understand, no? Worth understanding. So we'll talk about these theories as well. So now let's go to the socio-historic cognitive linguistic theory by Vygotsky. No? Lev S. Vygotsky believed that the child is socially dependent at the beginning of his cognitive life. So we'll be talking about cognitive development. So, ano yung cognitive? Alam natin yan, no? Something that goes inside this skull, no? The cognitive development. And he believed that the child, is socially dependent to people around him, to people around them. The children are socially dependent to the people around them, and development is concerned as dependent on social interaction. That's why if you I have heard about the story of the child of Aveyron, no, whom was found in a forest and has not been interacting with any person at all, no, was affected by that loss of interaction. So he cannot speak, um, and he has delayed development. No, si Victor, no, he was called Victor by the one who found him. And so we say that during the early years of the child's life, it is important that he or she will experience the kind of social interaction that will help him or her develop socially, no, and develop the cognitive linguistic capacity. Yeah. And so that environment is called zone of proximal development. This is the zone of the child, zone where the child maximizes the development. And how is it being done? Of course, you provide the child with, the child should be provided with people who will care, with people who will help or assist um, him or her in the development, who will assess their development as well, and will provide the necessary interaction so that the child will acquire skills and information, no? So that the child will develop. So the zone of proximal development is important for the child. So nasaan yung zone of proximal development ng isang bata? Ako, I would say that it is still in the context, no, in the Filipinos, in the context of the family. And our family is so much extended that the child um, yung mga tao dun sa zone of proximal development, nakakalito yon. Kahit naman ikaw, di ba, nalilito ka kung anong instruction ang ibinibigay sa'yo. So, ganito din yung development ng isang bata, no? Cognitive and linguistics. Okay? In the context, no, in the Filipinos, in the context of the family. And our family is so much extended that the child um, is being influenced by so many people in the family. And so dapat yung kanyang zone of proximal development is somewhat yung development ng isang bata, no? Cognitive and linguistics. Okay, so it is given by, of course, a caring adult and or assistant from other caring adult as well. Okay, so what are the principles of development? We need to find out. No, we will find out today the different principles of development, and I will discuss to you this different principles. Okay, number one, basic principle of development is that growth and development are a result of both nature and nurture. Hindi natin to pinagbabangga. No, rather, we say that nature develops via nurture. No, hindi ito nature versus nurture. Okay? Sinasabi natin, oh, sino ba talaga ang mas mahalaga? Alin ba talaga dito ang mas mahalaga? What is more important for the growth and development of the child? Is it the nature or the hereditary factors, the biological factors of the development of the child, or the maturation plan of the genes, or is it nurture, how the child in the zone of proximal development develops? I would say that the nature is being nurtured by the environment so that it will reach its maximum capacity, so that the child will reach the maximum potentials that he can be or that she can be, as the child grows. So, growth and development is influenced by a combination of genetic, biological, environmental, and experiential factors. No, yung genetic, genetic and biological characteristics natin, but also our environment, no, and our interaction experiences. These are important for growth and development. One's development may impede if there are negative interventions that are happening in terms of genetic and biological growth. Also, if the environment doesn't support the growth and development of the person. So, nakakaroon tayo ng mga developmental delays. Yan. Genetically speaking, no, meron ding na developmental delays. And also, in terms of the environment, can also influence developmental delays. And then the second principle of development is that development is placed across several interconnected domains. There are different domains that where we develop, no, but they are linked with each other. But they may not be parallel in terms of development, no, such as language and physical development, or vice versa. There are different kinds of cognitive development, social development, or moral development. These are different domains, but they are linked with each other, but may not be parallel across domains. So basically, these are different domains with different growth and development patterns, but also they are interconnected with each other. Number 3 principle is that it is progressive over time. So as we grow old, no, we follow a sequence. No, may sequence ang development. Progressive. When we say progressive, paganda ng paganda. Kaya tingnan nyo ikaw. Tingnan mo. Pagwapo ng pagwapo. Paganda ng paganda habang tumatanda ka. Pag sabihin sa akin, ma'am, baliktad. Hindi yan totoo. Dapat as you grow older, you become better, no? As one person grows, progressive over time. So, as you can see, no, if you will look at your photo album, sana meron pa kayong mga photo albums para mabalikan nyo, or if you will look at the timeline of your Facebook, no, you will see that a child grows year by year, and the pictures will unfold series of stages of development. And basically, principle of development is that it is consequent. It is very consistent in sequence. But and because of individual differences, because of our individual genes, because we are um, different from each other, varied, and we are diverse. No, we may develop in a unique way, but the sequence of development is consistent for all individuals. So merong uniform pattern kung kailan yan nag-iiba-iba individually because of our individual genes. Yan yung parang amazing part of our being a human person, amazing part of how we are created and how we are formed as a person, no? Such amazing things that we can know about ourselves and about other people as well. But even though we develop in unique ways, the sequence of development is progressive and sequential. Okay? So tandaan natin yan na consistent for all individuals, but um, different also in a unique way. Yeah. And then fourth principle, individuals' development does not always proceed evenly or at the same rate. My development is definitely different from even from my twins. Even twins develop at different speed or different rate. Okay? So there are some degree of variation around what is considered as normal for an individual to complete a developmental task, but it still should be considered within the normal. So meron talagang normal pattern, but as I've said earlier, no, individual development doesn't always proceed evenly at the same rate. So halimbawa, nasa isang classroom ka, hindi mo sasabihin na uniform ang development ng lahat ng bata. So you will see some developmental patterns, no? But each child, no, has a different rate of development. And you cannot if you are a learner centered teacher, you cannot just close your eyes and just teach, no. uh, you need to look at how the children in your classroom are developing individually so that you may give them the proper education and the proper pedagogies that they can actually enjoy with you, no, as you teach. So importante yon, no. And a profiling of student in the classroom, of the students in the classroom, will be a helpful guide. That's why tinutulungan tayo ng mga school nurses, tinutulungan tayo ng ating mga non-teaching personnel to look at their growth, get their weight, physical development, and then also the guidance teacher or the guidance counselor will look at their emotional development as well. And then as teachers, we look at their social development. So there are certain developmental tasks that we can actually make them do so that we can assess now if they are completing a developmental task expected of that within the normal range of development. Fifth principle is that for most individuals, growth and development occur within a family or family-like contexts. So children of the same parents, no, figures uh, almost the same. And of course, parental figures, parents' involvement, no, are primary concern of this principle, no. Thus, the parent figures are the ones who are primarily responsible for seeing that the child has the needed support for development and is protected from conditions that would impede development. So our family is the first context of development. The families of the children are the first thing that you will look upon, no, when there are development delays. We need to ask the parents what are happening, what are the context of the family, and so we can provide the necessary intervention so that the child will develop, no, at the same almost the same rate as with their classmates. And having caring parent figures, or having parent or adult care is very important for the child's development. So the context of the family is very important. This is a very important principle. That's why the basic unit of the society is family, because that's where we grow as a person, and family is important. So pag sinabi nating pamilya dito, hindi lang naman yung tatay at nanay, the caring individuals around the child, na the zone of proximal development, as I may say, from the theory of Bronfenbrenner and Vygotsky. And then number six, the sixth principle is that there are certain things that undermine the development of the child, no, in the psychosocial domain, in the moral domain, in the physical domain, in the linguistic and cognitive domain. No, basically these are different kinds of abuses, neglect, and poor parenting. They This can severely affect the development of the child. No, yung physical, yung failure to thrive, you can see it, malnutrition, failure, of course, aside from malnutrition, being underweight, and delayed development may sometimes, be an impact of neglect and poor parenting. So the effects of maltreatment on development of the child results complex interaction of factors, including um, the severity of maltreatment, the developmental stages of the child, the physical and psychological constitution of the child, how the child physically developed and psychologically developed, and the interpersonal capacity of the child. We need to mitigate this risk. So we see that there are children at risk in our classroom in terms of delayed development, and there are certain reasons. So we need to know, as teachers, we need to know the reason why these children are underdeveloped, no, are not developing. Maybe there are abuses happening, or maybe neglect and poor parenting. Teka lang, responsibilidad ba ito ng mga teachers? Tinitingnan natin yon, because we are in the principle of loco parentis, that when the child is in our care, we need to see that we need to ensure that they are developing in their maximum potential. Now, anong gagawin? Of course, we need to talk with the parents, and we need to assist the parents as well, because we are part also of the zone of proximal development of the child, especially in the younger years, na yung mga preschool, yan, grade 1. But of course, until 12th grade, importante, nakikita natin yan, because 18 years old and below, we call them children. The child is still a child and needs an adult to care for them. Okay, so what are the basic issues of human development? The basic issue is that we have assumptions about our nature, the humanity, that because of the original sin, it was spiritually speaking, or according to the teachings of the church, we inherently feel this selfishness, and we tend to do bad things now, and believes that the society or the family's task is to control the selfish and aggressive impulse of the child in order to behave in positive ways. So dahil daw sa minana nating kasalanan, tayo ay basically masama, may kasamaan. No, well, sinabi naman ni Paul sa kanyang teaching, no, gusto ko bumait pero hindi ko magawa. Si Paul ba yung nagsabi, no? Look at the Bible, read the Bible. Sinabi niya ba yon? Baka in my own words, pero there are certain verses in the Bible that would say na, yes, meron akong struggle, no, to do what's good, but there's a certain selfishness, no? That's the assumption, no? Meron tayo talagang tendency. No? Sabi naman ng mga Buddhist nating mga kapatid, kaya nga ibabalance mo yung yin yang, ibabalance mo 'yan, no? Sabi ng ating mga sabi pa, I need uh, to follow the eighth path of righteousness. Yan, sabi ng mga kapatid nating Buddhist. So, napakahalaga na yung society makita how these aggressive impulses of the child is being controlled, but hindi dapat extrinsic yung control. It should be intrinsic. Pag-usapan natin yan mamaya sa moral development, no? And then another assumption is that we are inherently good. There's something good in us, no? Fundamentally good, no? Lahat ng tao merong kabutihan diyan sa puso. Ayan, sinasabi. It maintained, no, this one issue maintained that our children, the children were fundamentally good and that they had instinctive sense of right and wrong, and they would develop positively as long as society did not interfere with their natural impulses. Siyempre, issue ito, no? Papabayaan mo lang ba yung child na mag-isip kung ano ang tama o mali? Ayan. So, sino ba dapat ang magturo? Hayaan ba siyang malaman niya? Hayaan mo siya, malalaman niya rin yan. No? So, issue yan ng hanggang saan natin tuturuan ang bata. Maraming issue dyan, issue ng pagpili ng gender, issue ng pagsagot the way na sumagot sa magulang, mga ganyan. So, makikita natin na it affects, no, how we will rear children and how we help them develop as a person. And then the theory of tabula rasa, no? Some people maintain that, the mind of the children is a tabula rasa or a blank slate or a blank tablet waiting to be written by teachers or by the parents, no? Tabula rasa, empty tablet, empty, walang laman. Or empty bucket, no? This is an issue, and if you will actually talk to a child, you will see na hindi yan walang alam, no? Pumapasok yan sa klase natin na dala-dala niyan ang mga experiences sa family. So, hindi tabula rasa. Ayun, importanteng makita natin itong mga assumption na ito sa ating human nature, being a human, no? Ano ba talaga yung nature natin? So, there are certain philosophies that explains the human nature. Kailangan malaman natin, okay, hinahanapan natin ito and there are siguro sa inyong theories of education and principles of education, you will talk about and you will hear about constructivism that actually explains very differently from the theory or the assumption of tabula rasa or a blank slate, no? And then we have the issue, binanggit ko na ito kanina, I have mentioned nature versus nurture. No? Nature, of course, we know from our discussion earlier that it refers to heredity and these are biological-based dispositions, while nurture includes learning experiences, child-rearing methods, and societal contexts. So, ano ba talaga ang makakapagpa-develop sa child? Hayaan natin na mag-mature siya biologically and ibatay sa kanyang nature ang kanyang mga dispositions, or should we provide the child with different experiences, with different learning materials, with different methods of child rearing na sa family or sa parents or sa mga teachers, and to be careful with the social context as well. But ito ang sinasabi ko, no, ito ang tinatayuan ko as an educator: nature via nurture. So we nurture what is there, and we develop and we help develop what is already there so that it will reach its maturity and maximum potentialities. Okay, number 3, activity versus passivity. Active meaning the child or the people in the zone of proximal development orchestrate the development by exploring their own world, and also passivity being being dependent on the forces of nature. Um, papabayaan lang kung ano ang papabayaan mo lang kung anong, kung ito yung environment niya, di hayaan mo lang siya. Baka mag-develop siya, no? But when we say active, we provide everything, no? That the child can explore so that he will grow. And then the issue of continuity versus or end discontinuity. Continuity theories believes that human development is a process and occur in small steps without sudden changes. But some discontinuity theorists believe that the course of development is more like a series of stairs and steps, and in which elevates the individual in a new level of functioning. Parang yung continuity diretso, but yung discontinuity meron siyang different levels, pataas ng pataas, no? A new level of functioning as well. And then universality and context specific. The extent, this is all about the extent to which developmental changes are common to everyone, which is what we call universal, in the world. This is a very general description of development. And then, of course, there are context specific issues also. When the patterns of development and development characteristics differs from one person to another person, and it depends on the contexts or environment that they are living in. Okay? So, nalaman na natin yung mga issues, no? And basic concepts in human development and child and adolescent development. This time, I will introduce to you the principles of human development and lifespan perspective. So the principles of human development and lifespan perspectives, these are very important considerations in teaching students. We see lifespan perspectives such as development. The development of a person is a lifelong process. It doesn't stop. Learning never stops. No, as long as you are living, lifelong. Kaya nga man tayong tinatawag na lifelong learning. No, it doesn't end in schooling. Wherever you are, you still develop as a person. And then we have a lifespan perspective that development is multi-directional. Sinabi natin kanina, there are certain directions or dimensions that we can look at how the child is developing. And then we have that the development is always, it always involves both gains and loss. There are gains and there are loss. And if we have a learning loss, then we get up, get back up, and learn, relearn. And then development is characterized by lifelong plasticity. Ano ba yung ibig sabihin ng plasticity in the development? Certain flexibility. And then it is shaped by contexts, historically speaking, culturally speaking. And then development is it is multiply influence, by people. Ang daming nag-influence sa'yo. So it requires multiple discipline as well. Okay, so we look at the sequence of development, and then we look at environmental directions, and we look at the universal patterns and global patterns and its implication to education, such as a development sequence, the physical, motor, mental, social, emotional development takes place in certain orders, and but varies from one individual to another. And so the child, in the school must acquire skills necessary to develop other skills as well. So that's what we're going to do in the school in order to help them maximize their growth and development sequences. And then we look at the universality of patterns of behavior. So there are global patterns of behavior, but there are also smaller ones, smaller patterns of behavior. And so we always remember that not all children in the classroom have the same rate of development. Lagi natin tatandaan na hindi pareho si Juan at si Pedro. Magkaiba silang bata, and there's no one size fits all education. No, if you are a good teacher and you want to be a good teacher, you need to be learner centered. And just to tell you, our educational system in the Philippines is focused on the learner. We have a learner-centered educational system. And so we always consider the development of the individual child. No? Importante na binibigyan natin ng magandang consideration ang bawat individual child, ang bawat isang bata sa loob ng classroom. Hindi ito generic teaching. We cannot do generic teaching, and we need to see that different children have different rates of development, and so we will provide them with different tasks that are applicable to their own growth. And then the growth and size and development of motor control takes place in a head to tail direction. So the development of the child, the proximal development of the child is from the head to tail, or the from the bodily parts now. And it should be considered to assure satisfactorily satisfaction in the development of the children. What else? We can use different available resources in the school, and when we say that we want to help sustain the interest of the child, we should be able to know their enthusiasm and interest and give the possible support that they need. Okay, what else? Meron bang certain critical moment in the development of the child? No, theorists in education would say that the early development is very critical in the life of a person. So the stages of infancy until childhood is important and critical in the development of a human person. No? And then we have growth that builds upon the organism that is transforming but preserving some continuity. Meron tayong potentials that we discover, but also we keep building other traits that we already have. Yung mga traits na we already developed, but we build on and add on to this developed traits. And then the interrelations of the different dimensions of growth. So there are different measures of growth, but sometimes, many times over, it correlates. Now, the skills are um, needed to develop other skills, no? And it's very complex, and there's a very complex sequence, but we can actually develop activities in the classroom that would help the child to develop these different dimensions. Okay, of course, we have differences, no, issues, individual issues in the rate of development, and we need to refrain from comparing our students. We cannot compare. That's really the least thing that you will do in the classroom. Do not compare your students, no, to each other. Or even if you have children, do not compare your children to each other, because they are all individually special, different, and precious. Yeah. So, what are the processes and periods of development of a child and adolescent? Let's see. So, these are patterns, these are complex, and these are products of several processes such as cognitive, biological or physical, and social emotional processes. Okay, so we look at the biological processes. It involves changes in the body of the child. Basically, for the end time, I will again emphasize that the generic and genetic inheritance plays a large part of the biological processes. Um, this processes underlie the development of the brain, the gains in height or the growth in height, weight, changes in the motor skills, uh, puberties, hormonal changes, no, and the development of the different systems of the body. So these are all biological processes. It pertains to important processes that are needed, no, to mature in order for the child to be healthy as well. And then we have the second process, which is the cognitive processes. It involves the child's thinking. How do the child think? Yeah, we talk about intelligence, we talk about cognitive development processes, no, that enables a growing child to understand and solve a problem, to understand a story that they are reading, to read and to explain what they're reading, and then also how to memorize a poem or other creative strategies, and to speak meaningfully, no, connected sentences. So these are cognitive processes now that is evident in the understanding and in creating things, no, as we know that the highest form of objective that we can do in the classroom is for our children to create something out of the things that they have understood. So that's important. And then we have the social emotional processes that involves changes in the child's relationship with other people, changes in emotions and in personality. So these are influenced by the parents and the caregivers' nurturance of the child. If a boy is aggressive on a and he would attack a peer, then definitely we look at how the emotional processes are being done in the life of the boy. Or even if a girl develop assertiveness at certain point, bakit siya assertive? Yan, no? Kasi leader siya. So siguro ay uh, tine-train siya ng magulang niya to be a leader and to be very outspoken, diba? And then Sometimes as teacher, meron tayong mga biases dito na ayaw natin ng batang babae sumasagot or very aggressive. Ayan. Gusto natin na lahat tahimik. Hindi lahat ng bata makakaupo ng ano 'no, ng 3 oras diyaan sa classroom mo. So, dapat alamin mo ano ba yung mga social emotional processes na pinagdadaanan ng mga estudyante. And then, we also have the, adolescent feelings of course, um joy after having good grades, all reflect social emotional processes in their development. So what are their reactions, no, in the different sabi natin stimulus, no, in the environment. Ano ba yung mga nagiging reaction nila sa pakikipag-interact nila sa mga tao sa kapaligiran o sa mga nangyayari sa buhay nila. So these are important things to consider in the social in looking at the social emotional processes of the child. Okay, so we have here different processes and principles of a child's development. We have the prenatal, so the description is its conception to birth, and we look at the physical development, know how that child develops in the prenatal care. How has the child have been taken care of by the parents? And then in infancy, birth at full term to about 18 months being an infant. So, what are the social attachment issues that the child has, or the locomotor skills being established, and the rudimentary languages, the basic languages of the child. And then in early childhood, about 18 months to 6 years, we look at how language is established, and the sex typing, no, knowing if she's a boy or a girl, physical in nature, and then looking at the group play that will end in readiness for schooling. So dapat by 5 years of age, the child is excited to go to school, no, and ready to go to school. What are the different readiness factors that we need to see for to say that the child is actually ready for school? Then we have the late childhood, about 6 years old to 13 years old. There are many cognitive processes that involve in this stage, and so they are preparing to become adult. So we look at them as growing individuals. And then we have the adolescence that begins with puberty and ends in maturity. So we expect them to get the highest level of cognition and cognitive development, independence from parents, and of course, responsible sexual relationships. Young adulthood, we look at about 20 years old to 45 years old, no, looking at the skills on career and family development. And then, like me, no, in the midlife, we look at the career at its highest point, but also self-assessment and looking at retirement. And those who have retired are considered in the late life. So as they enjoy family achievement, they are also what we call in the exit stage of life, looking at how they are looking at life, and they can be mentored. They can mentor others as well. So, what are the stages of the human development? We will discuss this on the second part of the lecture. Meanwhile, you can have a tea break as well, or a water break, or a health break. Thank you. So, welcome back to our discussion of the child and adolescent development review of the BLEP competencies. And now we'll talk about stages of human development. Yeah, so stages of human development pertain to the number of period in a human cycle. Now, in a human life cycle, although the focus of discussion is of individuals that are in school, child and adolescent, but there are brief descriptions that belongs to other stages of development here. Now we'll discuss about adulthood, early adulthood, and we'll discuss some of these implications to continuing on with life. So we'll talk about the prenatal stage from the conception to birth. So this period is considered the most, if not the most important period of the other all periods in the lifespan of a person, because this is where life begins. And the person's life begins at the conception. And prenatal begins at conception and ends at birth, approximately 280 days in length, or we call it 9 calendar months, or we even call it 42 weeks. No? So this period is divided into different phases. No? Ito yung nalaman mo, no, na may baby sa loob ng tummy, no, nagdadalang tao. Yan, pagdadalang tao. So this is the prenatal period. Why is it important to discuss a child development? Because the child develops, no, at conception. Napakahalagang maintindihan natin na ang life ng tao ay nagsisimula sa conception. Sa pagbubuo doon sa pagdadalang tao ng kanyang nanay. Okay? So we have the fertilization and to the second week, and it's called the germinal stage. This is where we'll meet the zygote. Remember the zygote, hindi ito pangalan ng tao, ito ay pangalan ng baby. Ito ay description, no, ng baby sa loob ng sinapupunan, no, doon sa uterus, no, na nagpa-fertilize. So ang tawag natin diyan germinal stage, or during fertilization. The zygote refers to the newly formed cell after the union of the egg and sperm cell, no? A process which is also called as fertilization, when the sperm, the only one sperm who finished the line, no, who went to the finish line, and the finish line is the egg cell, no, and they unite in order to form a new cell. And then cell division begins in time no longer than 36 hours after fertilization. Once that sperm and egg cell unites with each other to form a new cell, there are different processes such as cell division, and it lasts no longer than 36 hours after that fertilization. And then subsequently, for 3 to 4 days, the zygote, from the oviduct will travel down to the fallopian tube and to the uterus, and then it will be implanted in the uterus. No? So yun na, may nagaganap na development doon. So you see that when the sperm cell that one cell reach the egg cell, that's where life already began. Okay, and then we have the embryonic period, 2 weeks to 2 months, or 8 weeks. It's called as the period of the embryo. Of course, this is what we call the embryonic period or embryonic stage. The cell, which is known as the zygote, becomes an embryo. Okay, By the 14th day after the fertilization, there is a blastocyst, um, and the cell is already implanted in the uterus. No? So the zygote is already implanted there. And um, there starts the attachment of the umbilical cord in the placenta, and to function, no, the life saving and the life support of the child. This period is also considered as the most critical stage or period for the reason that the embryo is most vulnerable to damage and defect. So after 2 weeks, no, it's definitely where the mother should be careful enough to um, let this embryo attached, no, with the umbilical cord and the placenta. Okay. And then we have the fetal period, 8 weeks to birth. It's also called the period of the fetus. The embryo before, from zygote to embryo to fetus. So the fetal stage begin with the formation of the first bone cells. Various organs will grow and to its functionality and take appearance now in the human body. The fetus will have uh, different parts of the body and can kick and can manipulate extremities, the upper and lower extremities. It can open its mouth, it can frown and turn its head, and as well as take a few breaths by the end of the third month. So during the third month or the 8th week, no, there are different development that starts now in the fetus. Okay, we have the second stage of development, the infancy stage. No, of course, by the way, no, so natapos na natin, no, then we go to conception. No, tapos na siya, develop na siya, and then after 9 months, the baby is ready to be delivered, basically via normal delivery or by cesarean. Nevertheless, no, women who goes through childbirth are heroes, and we salute our parents and our mothers, especially because of this 9 months of child bearing. Uh, I wouldn't call it suffering because this is a gift, no, and an opportunity to actually carry life in the body. That there is someone, no, living, residing for 9 months in the body of the parents. I am also a mother of 3 kids, and so I carried in my stomach, in my uterus, 3 children at different stage in my life. Okay, we now go to the second stage, which is infancy. So infancy is from birth to 2 weeks of life. Infancy is the stage where it started during the birth, no? Whether cesarean or normal delivery. So it is the transition period between the birth and the first 2 weeks of life, no? And it's the shortest of all developmental period. Such the word infant suggests that extreme helplessness in the life of the child. Basically, the child is outside the body of the mother, but it is a period of being dependent, no, to the mother. And because the umbilical cord has been cut and has been tied, and so this period of a neonate, no, is characterized by adjustments, and that the umbilical cord is tied already, and at the second week of the postnatal life, it's also called postnatal because the child is already um, uh, uh, the mother has already given birth to the infant. And then we have from second week to second year of life. No, week 2 to year 2, we have the babyhood. And this is the most exciting part. Well, every stage is actually exciting. Um, Compared to infancy, babyhood is characterized by decreasing dependency for the reason that this time the babies achieve enough body control to become independent. Because when you see the stage 2 or the infancy, no, the child is so fragile, it's so small, and then you wonder, no, bakit biglang lumaki yung baby? Yan. Sabi, parang nahanginan, ayan na siya. But because of the nurturance of the parents, no? So they achieve enough body control to become basically relatively independent. So there are developmental tasks that the babyhood characterize, no? That the baby should do, like learning to walk, learning to eat or to take solid foods. Ayan, functioning organs in elimination of waste in the body, such as, of course, to urinate, no, bowel movements, yan. But these are not yet really fully controlled. So, this is where the challenge of potty training normally occurs. And then achieving reasonable psychological stability, no? Um, Especially during their hunger or sleep time, or relating to parents and siblings, and learning the foundations of speech. This is where the child actually learns how to speak. Yan, no? Second week to second year of life. And then stages of human development, the early childhood stage, year 2 to 6 years of life. Uh, this is where the child names everything that they see. Nah? They also see that, some see that this is the troublesome age, but I don't see it. This is such a very aggressive period of development stage. This also the play age, no? The preschool age, yeah, the exploratory age, and the questioning age, no? Where you will receive a lot of what is that, a lot of why is that, why the endless whys, no, of a 4-year-old or a 2-year-old, as long as they can already communicate with the caring adult or the parents, they start to ask, why is that? Why is that? Why? So also, this is an exciting opportunity to actually talk to the child, no, intelligently, because this is where the child explores the different things in the environment, and so this is an opportune time for the parents to explain about the birds and the sea, and the bees, and how seeds grow, and all of these things in our environment, as well as the spiritual things then. And then we have also developmental tasks that includes, of course, control of bowel movement, and elimination of course, eliminate control of elimination. And then we have here the developmental task of using the spoon and fork, and self-feeding, also self-dressing. Can they dress themselves already? And explore and do things to satisfy their own curiosity. And everything here is concrete learning. Okay, acquisition of adequate vocabulary. And then, yan, hindi natin ito pwedeng kwentuhan ng mga abstract things. No, everything is concrete. Development motor skills that allow them to communicate the thoughts and feelings with those people around them. Okay. The late childhood stage, no, is a period for learning the basic skills in life. It coincides with child's elementary school years, such as grade 1 and graduating at age 12 in the elementary. And we see that this is a critical period of achievement of intrinsic motivation as well. And they say this is the gang age where they would like to hang out um, with their peers, and also this is the age of conformity. Here, the physical growth is at a slow and relatively even rate. And so the most important consideration here is the promotion of health and nutrition among children of this. Sabi nila nagkakaroon ng growth gap during these years. And so immunization is important during this period, and also um, proper nutrition and proper care, no, is important for them to realize, and for parents to actually provide them the needed support, no, in order for them to grow during these years of growth. And then we have the pre-adolescence or puberty stage, uh, pre-teens, maybe 13 or 14 years old. It derived from the Latin word pubertas, which means manhood, and which marks the beginning of adolescence. This is where we see growth spurt, na? Importante, maintindihan natin ano yung growth spurt. Oy, biglang lumaki. Yan, no? So there are rapid acceleration in height and in weight, and the secondary sex characteristics. Now, and it has three stages: the prepubescent, where the secondary sex characteristic begins their development, but their reproductive organs are not yet fully developed. And so we discourage children at this time getting pregnant because the reproductive organs are not fully developed. And this is a very, very important, no, reminder for parents, no, to take care of the children, not to engage, no, in sexual activities yet when they are in the pre-puberty and the puberty stage. And then we have the pubescent stage, characterized by menarche for girls and nocturnal emissions in boys. No, menarche. Yeah. Nagsisimula ng magkaroon ng mga signs of having menstruation. And then we have the post-pubescent stage or characteristics become well developed, and the sex organs begin to function in mature manner. So we look at this stage as a period of growth spurts. Okay, and then we have the adolescent stage during the 14 to 18 years of life, no, until grade 12. So this is where you meet junior and high school children from 14 to 18 years of life. The adolescent, no, is an exciting person to meet because adolescence is the age when the individual becomes integrated into um, the adult life. So they are not yet adult, but they are not children anymore. So this is the age when the child no longer feels he is below the level of his elders, but not equal to adults. No? So in between, the in between stage, but they are expected to learn the things, no, for adulthood. Yeah. So of course we already know about the word adolescere, meaning to grow in maturity. So early adolescence extends roughly from 13 to 16, but the late adolescence cover the period of 18 or maybe until 21. Ayan yung legal maturity of our children. And then we have now the adulthood stage, college years to early career stage, no? Which is characterized by the need for love and intimacy in adult life, and to become more fulfilling in marriage life, and with the involvement of being committed to a person. Okay, also the need for generativity through achievement, the need to achieve. Yan. But also there are problems and issues such as burnout, alienation, mental health problems in work. Yeah? This is where the pressure of working actually haunts the adulthood stage. But important then look at the moral development. No, during this age is characterized by responsibility for the welfare of others. And so when kayo siguro no nakagraduate na kayo, so there are different things that you are planning to take care, how to take care of your parents as well, have a job, pass this blep so that you can actually look after your parents or have a stable job as well. And then the old age, 65 years of life. Most individuals in this late years begin to show slow physical and intellectual and social activities. Um, there is actually a gradual decline of cognitive development in this older life. And so older people will see art in nature in a more appreciative way. This is also the time of the adults to or those who are already in their 65 years of life to develop symptoms of senility or sometimes memory loss or other problems in the cognitive development, such as the dementia or lack or loss of intellectual functioning. In late adulthood, affiliation is more important than achievement needs. They're done with the having to achieve, no, with the need to have to achieve. So they are actually looking at how they can be more connected to their children and to their other retirees as well. So those are the different stages of the human development. And so, what are the implications of the different developments? So, these stages of development has important characteristics that a teacher must recognize and must consider in terms of thinking about the pedagogies and the classroom management that they will implement in the classroom. Okay. What about theories of development? We'll discuss theories of development, and these are very, very important discussion also. So we look at Freud's psychosexual development, or we call it commonly known as psychoanalytical theory, where there are concepts of the personality and the conceptualization of personality that has three parts: the id, the ego, and the superego. So we look at the different stages, such as the stage of the oral, and the stage of the anal, the stage of phallic, and the stage of latency, and genital stage. Okay, so what are the educational implication of this? Of course, we look at if we are going to teach children from birth to 1 year old. We look at how the primary needs of security and, of course, support for life is important for these children. They are seeking gratification definitely by their mouth. So the major conflict here is how to wean, no, from the breastfeeding or maybe from the milk feeding in the bottle. And then we have the anal stage where uh, the conflict, the source of conflict is how to potty train or toilet train the child. It is important that at the years 1.5 to 3 years old that the child is already potty trained, because they will definitely have a hard time um, in school if they are not potty trained. So ang dami ngayon ano, malalaki na naka-diaper pa. So as parents also need to look at how they are able to train children to control their elimination of bodily waste. And then we have the 4 to 6 years old. We have the Oedipus and Electra complex. No, being aware of their genitals. And then we have the period of latency where the energy is directed to physical and intellectual activities as well. And they develop a relationship with the peers of the same sex. And then we have the um, puberty onwards, that activities are directed to sexual maturity and function of the development skills and coping with environment until adulthood. And then the second theory is the Erikson stages of psychosocial development. In this theory, Erikson not only put the sexual aggressive impulses in the discussion, but put it in the larger context, such as formation of character, no, as a lifelong process and a lifelong work. So during the infancy, um, what are the issues during this time? No, trust and mistrust. And then the values, no, or the virtues that should be that the we should be focusing on is the learning to trust others or faith. And then we have our belief. Then we have the early childhood. The issue here is autonomy versus shame and doubt. And so the focus of teaching should be self control, no, without losing self esteem, the ability to cooperate and express oneself. No? And we'd like to look into how we control the defiance of the child and a positive discipline. Then we have the late childhood, 3 to 5 years old, no, which is characterized by initiative versus guilt. This is where the child becomes assertive of his own belief and his behavior, but he's also having the ability to evaluate his own behavior. And so we need to look at how we develop children of this stage to become more self-confident and to have a good evaluation of behavior, to do what's right. And then the school age, no, industry versus inferiority. This is where the action begins, no? Learning to create, to develop, to manipulate, developing sense of competence via perseverance. So we parents, teachers will support this by giving them chores, no, at home and different developmental tasks as well during this stage. No? Kaya nga naaalala nyo, no? Lagi tayong naglilinis ng kwarto. Kaya ayan yung bakit may cleaners time sa elementary, bakit may tasks sa bahay. Yan. Yan. So, this is also the time where they develop their agency to communicate with peers. And so we need to look at how they can strengthen their self-esteem as well. And then at adolescence, we have the issue of identity versus role confusion. As we have mentioned earlier, they're not kids anymore. They're not children, but they are not yet adult. And so the the identity crisis begins at this early stage of adolescence. And we see how the sense of self becomes evident, and the need for self actualization. They are seeking to find their identity. Adolescents try many roles in order to look at how they will actually develop themselves, no? And it continues on until um, they get a decision of who they are and who they will be. Of course, as teachers and as caregivers or child carriers, we need to understand that this is the stage where there are feelings of indecisiveness and confusion and possible deviance or defiance. Um, but we want to support their quest for their own identity as well. No, how to do that? They say this is the toughest stage for teachers and parents as well. But if we guide them properly, they can grow into responsible adults as well. Then we have the young adults, where the issue is intimacy versus isolation. So here, intimate relationship with another person, issues of commitment to work and commitment to relationship is the center of concern. And so this is not a part of course, teaching child and development, but we can discuss this. Our important choice, no? Career versus love life. Nandito ka ngayon siguro, no? Career versus love life. Pwede ba yung pagsabayin? Definitely yes, no? If you have a certain control or a certain level of control in your life, no? And how you put perspectives into each and how to put things into its proper perspectives as well. Adulthood, the issue here is generativity versus stagnation. So this is the looking at the midlife, ayan, and creativity, productivity, and concern for others. Also, looking at where have I been for the last 20 years or 40 years, maybe. And then we have the last stage, which is the stage of maturity, where the issue here is integrity versus despair, and looking at how the older generation or the older people um, look at their worth and uniqueness in their own in their lives. And then of course, looking at the how they will accept um, their contribution and impact to the society. And of course, they normally think about death, no, and preparation for it. Then we have having Hurst's developmental stages and tasks. So during infancy versus early childhood, the developmental tasks that are written here, uh, there are certainly things that can be added here, but these are important, no? Infancy and during the early childhood, that the tasks are achieved and be done by the individual child. If they can eat solid foods, if they can walk, if they can talk, if they can control elimination of bodily wastes, no, they can urinate or they can potty train. Root, rotate, relate emotionally with others, know how they relate with people around them, distinguishing right from wrong, development of conscience, of course, as learning about sex differences and sexual modesty, achieve personal independence, and identify, understand simple context, and concepts of social environment and physical reality. Then we have the middle childhood, where we focus on them achieving personal independence. No, they also learn physical skills required for games and required for simple tasks at home. We uh, we have to see that they can build healthy attitudes towards themselves selves, sorry, learn to socialize with other people, especially with their peers, learn appropriate roles, no, as man and woman, gain basic reading, writing, math skills, develop concepts for everyday living or tinatawag natin na life skills, of course, have a value system and develop positive attitudes towards social groups and institutions. In the adolescence period, the developmental tasks are establishing a more mature relationship with the same age individuals of both sexes or peers, their peers, achieve a feminine or masculine social role, accept their own physical body, of course, the acceptance of their genetic makeup, establish emotional independence from parents, provide assurance or economic independence. They will learn how they will become independent economically, prepare for an occupation or career, prepare for marriage and building of a family, acquire the skills to fulfill civic responsibilities and to show it, develop a set of values that will guide their behavior. In early adulthood, we see the developmental task of selecting a partner, learning to live with a partner, starting a family, managing a home, establishing a career or occupation, assuming civic responsibilities in the society, become a part of social group. For the middle adulthood, we look at fulfilling civic and social responsibilities, maintaining economic standard of living, assisting children to become responsible, happy adults, becoming good parents, relating to their partners, adjusting to physiological changes as well, and adjusting to their aging parents. Now, middle adulthood is such a handful. Daming ginagawa ng mga middle adults, no? Oftentimes, they're already in the executive and middle manager positions. And so they also uh, manage their people in work and also their children, plus their parents and other peers as well. And then later maturity, we look at the developmental task of adjusting to physiological changes and alteration in health status, no, retirement and altered income, adjusting to the death of a spouse, developing affiliation to their age group members, meeting civic and social responsibilities, and establishing living arrangements as well. Okay, Sullivan's interpersonal model of personality development. We look at the socio-emotional development of a child. We look at infancy, where the infant learns to rely on their caregivers to meet their needs, most especially their mothers. And then we have the childhood, where the child begins to learn immediate gratification and also to delay that this immediate gratification, to learn to wait actually. And then we look at the juvenile, where they fulfill peer relationships, And this is the gang stage. And then we have the pre-adolescent where they look at the same sex peers, no, girls group, boys group. Then we have the early adolescent where they learn to be independent and form relationship with the opposite sex. And for the late adolescence where the person actually can, establish intimate, long-lasting um, relationship with someone of the opposite sex. Cognitive development by Chan Piaget, of course, looking at the work of the cognitive processes in Piaget view, cognitive development involves processes based on actions and progressions. Uh, which becomes mental operations. So, what are the key concepts in Piaget's cognitive development? We look at schema, we look at assimilation, we look at accommodation, we look at organization, we look at equilibrium. So, a schema is described as both the mental and physical action involves in understanding and knowing. Meaning, if you know it cognitively, you can do it physically. Assimilation is the process of taking new information, no, to assimilate it in your understanding. Accommodation involves altering your schema already, no, or relearning or unlearning or discovering, no, as a result of new information and new experience. Organization is grouping of different behaviors towards competency, towards a system, arranging things into categories, uh, arranging or organizing ideas now cognitively. Equilibrium or equilibration is the stages of cognitive development where the child maintains a balance between assimilation or application of knowledge and uh, acquiring new knowledge or accommodation. So, what are the phases of development? Of course, we look at birth to 1 month by the use of reflexes, and these are reflexive, cannot control. No, the child cannot control the body. That's why we bundle them. Kasi hindi pa nila control yung kanilang extremities. And then stage 2, 1 to 4 months, it's center around their own body. Yan, extension of the cell. Secondary circular reaction, no, external environment becomes interesting and they want to move during the 4 to 8 months. And then we look at the coordination of secondary schemata, looking at goal-directed activities. So sabi ng mommy, come here, come here. Yeah. Tertiary circular reaction where they can develop rituals or processes so that they develop their goals. And then stage 6, 18 to 24 months using their mental imagery to understand their environment. So we look at object permanence, no? That's why the peekaboo game is a very developmental game during this time. Or sa atin, bulaga. Yan. So they see object permanence. And then we have the pre-operational stage where the child actually begin or emerge their ability to think, also using symbolism such as images and language to represent their understanding of their different aspects of environment. So we have the preconceptual, yan, symbolism, yan, intuitive, and then using the symbolic schemes. Then we have the concrete operation stage, 7 to 11 years, where we look at how the child learns the here and now Ayan, the objects, no, in a logical function. So logical na sila this time. And then we have the formal operation stage. We see they're able to see different relationship, complex reasoning and abstract things. They become more scientific in thinking, and they are capable of reasoning inductively and deductively. Okay, about moral development. Of course, it is also important to look at the moral development of the child, and there are different theories on them. Let's define morality. Well, it can be seen in different perspectives. Number one, how to distinguish right from wrong is important. No, morality is how you look at what's right and what's wrong. Number two is to act on this distinction. You know what's right and what's wrong, you act on the right. And then number three, to experience pride when you do the right thing. Okay, this is important, no, this ability is important for a child to live in this world, no, to communicate with others as well. This is on the affective and emotional component of the child. There are feelings that are connected to this, such as the feeling of concern for the common good or a feeling of guilt as well. And there are also the cognitive component of thinking about right and wrong and evaluation of behavior. And then the behavioral component of action, how we actually behave, and the reflection of the action. So this is very cognitive as well as behavioral. So let's look at the let's look at Kohlberg's stages of moral development. We look at the level one pre-conventional stage, which is characterized from birth to 9 years old. We look at the behavior of the child that is centered on punishment versus obedience orientation. When he look at something that he has done or a deed perceived wrong, if it is being punished, no, and it's something that is important for a child to have a zone of proximal development in terms of moral development as well. In stage two, we see the instrumentalist versus relativist orientation, the definition of being right and wrong, where it is approved by the context where he is. So it will be satisfied when someone actually anong tawag natin dito, reinforces uh, the behavior. And then we see at level two, the conventional stage from 9 to 13 years are characterized by two stages, stage 3 and 4. We look at interpersonal concordance. So there is the belief that there's an authority to be respected, and that they are in stage 4 duty bound to maintain social order. So they conform. Conformity is important here. And then we have the level 3, the post-conventional years and development, where the individual understand morality of having established law, and they also understand democracy and um, freedom, and also the concept of common good. So we look at stage 5, or the social contract on orientation, that a deed is definitely wrong when it violates others' rights. And then the stage 6, we look at the universal ethics orientation, where we say that the person is already ethical because that person acts on his own conscience. But the Gilligan's theory of moral development is also characterized by three stages, and there are transitions. So, at level one, orientation of individual survival transition, we look at it is concentrated on the self, and so it is characterized by selfish dependence on others, but it will transition to selfishness from selfishness to responsibility, where the child makes a connection among others, and to see that they can make responsible choices for themselves and for other people as well. And then we have the stage two, um, level of goodness and self sacrifice, where the child actually looks at how they can put their own needs aside, so that they can put the needs of others ahead of their own. And also, they feel responsible for others, independent in thinking and in morality. They also can use guilt to manipulate others when attempting to help. Okay. And then we have the transition from goodness to truth. So it is actually decision based. Now it is intention and it is consequential, meaning that the person actually chooses to or intends to help others and to do good deeds, and being responsible for helping others as well. And then the last stage would be morality of nonviolence, where the person sees the self and others as equals and assume responsibility and accountability for their own decisions. So the basic tenet here is not to hurt others, including the self, and the conflict is, of course, going back to the level one, no, selfishness and selflessness. Self judgment is important here. That is based on morality and conscience, no, and not on uh, consequences being given by others. And then we have Fowler's stages of faith. We have at pre-stage undifferentiated faith during the infant, because of course the infant shows trust, hope, and love, but also it competes about hunger, abandonment. No? During the stage, that's the pre-stage. During stage one, we have intuitive and projective faith among toddlers and preschoolers. They just imitate their parents' behavior or maybe their caregivers' behaviors and beliefs about religion and spirituality. During the school age, the child has mythical literal faith, and they already know about the existence of deity, according to Fowler, of course. And then we have the synthetic conventional faith during the adolescence, where there are questions. No, they question their own values and religious beliefs, and so this stage needs a lot of attention and needs a lot of guidance and mentoring. Then we have stage four, individual reflective faith during the late adolescence and young adult, where the person already assumed responsibility of their own attitudes, spiritual attitudes, faith, and beliefs. And then we have both for the adult, the stage five, which is called conjunctive faith, where it integrates into their life choices. The faith is integrated into their own daily living. And then we have the universalizing of faith during the adulthood, and makes the concept of I am responsible for my own belief as well. So this is the stages of faith according to Fowler. And then we have yeah, cognitive development, where we already discussed earlier Vygotsky's theory of cognitive development. We assume here that learning precedes development. and that self-regulation is important. No, it involves the internalization of signs or symbols acquired by an individual from others so that he can think by himself. The zone of proximal development, or the level of development immediately above a personal level, so taking into account uh, the zone or the context of development. The concept of scaffolding, where support for learning and problem solving, giving clues, reminders, encouragement, breaking the problems into different stages and different parts, providing examples or anything else that allows the student to grow in the independence as a learner. This is the task of the teacher and the parents or the caregivers. Bronfenbrenner's ecological approach to development shows that the developing person is actually living in different systems of environment: the microsystem, the mesosystem, the exosystem, the macrosystem, and the chronosystem. So the microsystem involves interaction of the child and other people to the immediate settings, such as the home, the school, or the peer group. That is the microsystem. The mesosystem involves different settings within the microsystems, no? The different interactions between people in the home, in the school, and the peer group. The exosystem involves institutions where the child does not directly participate but influences the child. And then we have the macro system, where the interaction of children with their beliefs, values, expectations, and lifestyles in their culture. That is the macro system. And then we have the chronosystem, the patterning of environmental events and transitions over one's life. During the lifespan, there are historical events that's happening, that or circumstances that affects the development of the person, individual person. So that's it for this day. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope that you will learn something new. I think you will be given um, practice sheets if ever you will request. So thank you, and I pray um, for a good result on your BLEP, and God bless you all. Thank you.